Hello and welcome to the CX Files for 5th June 2025. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
And I'm Peter Ryan in Montreal. Mark, hard to believe that we are almost halfway through this year.
Yeah, I know. It just does seem very weird. I know that we sort of say this as we get to the middle of every year, but it definitely seems to be getting faster, doesn't it?
It gets faster, and I remember somebody saying to me when I was really young, watch how time starts flying by the older you get. Do you remember how long it seemed between, say, your sixth birthday and your seventh birthday, or between Christmases at that age? It was an eternity. Now it's a couple of blinks of the eye and maybe one sleep.
Yeah, well, that's like the summer vacation from school where you would kind of
Oh.
break up and then it felt like an eternity until September when you had to go back again.
I know we had that in Canada when I was growing up, and you would always know when you were starting to get to the back to school time because the daytime television would start being interspersed with back to school TV commercials for clothes or for school supplies. And then it was just this like morbid countdown until early September. And I had the added painful aspect of the start of September not just being back to school, but it was also my birthday. So if you ever wanted to know when Peter Ryan's birthday was, it was usually on the first or second day of school.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Didn't
Yeah.
didn't make me very popular.
Well, it's similar to me, and the way the British schools worked was that would make me the oldest kid in my year group. I guess that's probably the same for you. Yeah.
Yeah, but that
Yeah.
was good. I mean, see, I was one of the younger ones in class. I mean, all the other kids seemed to be older because I was born later on in the year. And, it's a pretty big deal when somebody turns 7 years old in March and then you've got to wait to September to turn seven. It's really bad. And then, no matter what, they're still 6 months ahead of you to get to eight.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always the same. Well, we've got a discussion this week with David Neale, who we both know
Yeah.
from various places, including his most recent gig with Newton, where he was heading up their revenue generation. But he's now set up a new outfit called GBPO, and they are doing consulting advisory work. But one thing that they are doing that's quite different is accreditation for BPOs. So offering to effectively accredit and give a sort of badge that says you are telling the truth about the capabilities of your BPO. And I think that what you'll find when we sort of kick off the conversation, you'll find that I guess that I'm a little bit confused. I'm sort of asking about accreditation in terms of ISO and other sort of process standards, and what David's done is actually said he's not going to focus on the process or the operational standards, but he's basically going to ask the question: Is this BPO representing itself to the marketplace fairly? So when they talk about their attrition or when they talk about the number of people that they have, are they actually telling the truth? And I thought that was quite an interesting angle. So he's got an interesting business model there.
I think it's an interesting business model, and quite frankly, I think it's something that the industry could use. The problem that we have seen over the course of the past several years is the fact that there's almost been no standardization or there's been no level set when it comes to how a lot of different BPOs present themselves. I could see what David is doing as being an incredibly good game changer for especially up and coming BPOs that want to go for really interesting, funky contracts that want to do some very interesting work with some very interesting clients, but that might not necessarily have the name recognition or the mind share in the marketplace where people are going to know them. Something like what David's taking to the table or what he's bringing to the table, I think would lend an immediate level of credibility to perhaps newer, more enthusiastic players that might not necessarily be top of mind or or tip of tongue for a lot of different buyers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that with the giants of the industry, you pretty much know where their expertise is, and that's
Yeah.
often based on their track record and their client list. But certainly for smaller outfits that you may not know very well, If you can point to accreditation to say, look, we've had someone in looking at our capabilities, and what we're saying is verified by independent auditors, then that could be extremely valuable.
Yeah, and that value is so important nowadays. We know that we're dealing in a hyper competitive environment when it comes to the BPO market. Anything that can be done to add credibility and to almost give a leg up in terms of the competition, I think is very wise. And when David explained to me what he was doing not long ago at CX Outsources, we had a long talk about this. I immediately saw light bulbs just going on. Like it was to me one of the most important elements that I think you can get down to in regards to what a new or an emerging outsourcer needs to do if they're going to break into, say, a new vertical market, or they're going to break into a new geography or into a new revenue segment. Anything in terms of enhancing that credibility is so important. And this is what David and GBPO are bringing to the table.
Okay, well, let's go straight to my conversation with David. Hi, David. It's great to get you back. You were on this podcast 2 years ago when you were heading up revenue growth for Newton down in South Africa. Could you just give us a brief update on what's happened since the new venture that you've set up yourself, GBPO Solutions? So what are you focused on and doing now then?
Well, firstly, I can't believe it's been 2 years. I mean, that just shows how quickly time flies, and it's absolutely great to be back. So much has happened. So I think first and foremost, I'm now a father, which for those that can't see the video, explains why there's lots of grey hairs and tired eyes. But yes, quite rightly, I've also travelled the world and founded a new business in GBPO Solutions, which brings hopefully a brand new partnership model to the market. So I certainly wouldn't recommend starting a business and starting a family at the same time for anyone else that's listening. But since we last caught up, I guess on the podcast, that's what's been happening.
And that's fantastic. Well, when my wife was just about ready to give birth, my old dog died, and so I went out and got a puppy. So we ended up with a baby and a puppy in the house at the same time. So yeah, it's definitely a good idea to focus on something.
Yes, maybe just one at a time. But no, things have been great. And the new business is obviously taking up a lot of time and energy, but in a good way, in a positive way. It's really encouraging. We're 4 months in now, and things are working really well.
And one of the focuses, or one of the main areas of focus of what you're doing, is accrediting organizations, especially across the BPO industry. Now, we were having a conversation just before we started recording about accreditation in general, and there's loads of accreditation out there, especially things like ISO. But what is it that you're focused on? Where are you sort of specifically feeling that something is needed in the industry then?
Yeah, well, it came to mind that BPO procurement, if we want to call it that, or finding a partner, if we want to use more simplistic language, hasn't really changed in 20 years, Mark. So I started off as a client, I guess, securing BPO partnerships, and that process has pretty much felt and looked the same in all those 20 years since I started in the industry. And that would be, you develop a short list of some kind. You'll have in your mind what's important to you. You'll go to an RFP process. You might get help through a broker, or maybe a company that you've used in the past, or maybe they've approached you at a conference, maybe a Google search. But ultimately, you ask a series of questions. They respond with the answers that they feel are best suited to convey their potential as an ideal partner. You follow through, make sure you scratch away and see whether or not that's reality or not. And then ultimately you make that leap of faith. There's an element of cost and these kind of things that come into it, but ultimately you then make that leap of faith with your brand, your reputation, your share price, potentially even your job, in ensuring what they've told you is true and reflective. And it came to mind that there is no other major purchasing decision that you make in this way. So you don't buy a house based on the estate agent or realtor saying, trust me, all the windows are fine and you don't need to worry about it. You don't even buy a car that way. You want some kind of assurance that the mileage on the clock is true and reflective. So it seems quite strange, I guess, that over 20 years, the market hasn't really moved with any form of validation to say what you are buying and the partnership choice that you're making is independently true. So where it slightly differs to the ISO and the other things that are great is it sits above that. So it concentrates on all the core areas that often come through in an RFP. So I've undertaken hundreds, if not, it feels like thousands of RFPs, either as a client going to market or as a BPO answering those RFPs and ultimately trying to solution sell to the client. So I've got that unique perspective, I guess, of sitting on both sides of the fence. And what it encompasses, I guess, is people, process, policy, and technology, which are the four core areas, I guess, of what someone looks for in a BPO partner. And it validates not necessarily on capability. The client knows better than I ever will in terms of what capability they're looking for and what's good to them. But what it assesses is to say whether or not what they're presenting to you is the reality or not. So if their attrition is 2%, is it really 2%, or is there some calculation there that strips out training, attrition, and internal moves? If they say they've got a disaster recovery plan, have they really got a disaster recovery plan, or do they need to think of a plan as soon as the disaster arrives? Part of that absolutely incorporates, the other accreditations you've mentioned. So if they say that they're ISO, are they truly ISO, and is it up to date? So ultimately, it's a validation on whether or not the BPO is presenting a reality of what they can truly offer, which should mean an ideal partnership match, because the client knows exactly what they're purchasing and the BPO knows exactly what they've sold in order to win that client.
Yeah, that's interesting because, when we initially were talking about accreditation, I guess I was thinking very much about the process-oriented kind of accreditation. So ISO 9001 for quality, or 27001, I think, is the information security one. And you have stuff like HIPAA for when you're dealing with healthcare data in the US. But all of these are kind of very process-oriented. And it seems more that what you're doing is trying to define, like, what's the real version of the truth. If this company says we are an expert in retail and we've worked with retailers all over the world, then have they really done that? So it's like when a BPO is trying to sell its services, how much of it is a story and how much of it is a reality?
Quite right, yeah. And, you could use the example that, the HIPAA and the eyes may or may not be important to a client, but as long as they're going into that partnership with an understanding of whether or not it's the reality or not, that certainly helps with the purchasing decision. And I guess, as I spent 6 months developing this process and looking into the need for an accreditation in the market, it was evident that there wasn't one that was dedicated to specific BPO partnership. So it's a bit like there will be one that checks the oil in the car and checks the brakes on the car, but not one that checks fully whether or not that car is roadworthy. And what this accreditation does is it's dedicated specifically for BPO buyers that are looking for a BPO partner and gives them that confidence under those four areas of people, process, policy, and technology, and say that actually what you are purchasing has been independently checked and verified, and you can have confidence that what you're partnering with is true.
And you said that you spent 6 months working on designing that. How did you go about that process? Was it, did you base it on some other kind of accreditation that already exists, or was it just literally sitting there and designing it from the ground up?
Well, luckily, I had 20 years of experience of going to market and sourcing BPOs in their own right, and understanding how many times, I guess, that I was disappointed on the way in from what I'd been sold by the sales team to then the reality as a client. Part of that, I guess, is my understanding of sitting on the other side of the curtain and recognizing how you package up solutions to sell to clients, and also as an operator. So, I've led in-house teams, offshore teams, and understanding that sometimes what's missing in the RFP is what's important to the operator once that relationship starts outside of the procurement process. So I've combined, I guess, those hundreds, if not what feels like thousands of RFPs, and packaged them up into, okay, if you're really looking for a partnership that is authentic and what's important from either an operator or a procurement manager, what are the things that you ultimately want to do, or what do you want to see to be validated? So it should cut out a lot of the pain points in the RFP process because a lot of them are covered in that accreditation.
Yeah. Okay. And do you think then that having that accreditation gives, or it should give, the BPO a competitive edge? I mean, if they can point to that and say, look, the stuff that we are sending, the information we're sending you, and the responses to the RFP, we can validate that we are telling the truth because here, look, we've got this accreditation.
Yeah, I think it will be a differentiator to begin with in terms of, look, that you've had 4 responses, one of which is accredited, 3 of them aren't. Why would you take the risk on someone that isn't when our 4% is true and their 2% may not be? So I think that it's a differentiator today. What I strongly believe, Mark, is fast forwarding 3 to 5 years, it will be a gateway question, which is a bit like how alien it would seem to buy a house based on sold as seen. It will also feel alien to think actually we're going to partner with a client with a BPO, with all the risk associated to it, without that independent accreditation check, especially because it's fee-free for the clients. So there is no charge for the clients to partner with accredited members, and there's also 0% commission that comes from the BPO partner. So the client can take confidence that we're recommending accredited members because they're truly accredited, not because there's commission in it for us to recommend. So I think it will become very quickly a differentiator to a gateway. But one of the things that really stands in my mind when I talk to BPOs, and for anyone listening, and even for yourself, Mark, I know you like to research subjects. Many BPOs sell inverted in the pyramid of what I believe is important from a client when they purchase. So if you look at most BPOs will start with 2 areas, which is competency and price. So we're great and we'll offer you a great price. In reality, the foundation starts before that, which is trust and transparency. So first of all, do I trust you, and are you being transparent with me, and are you sure you're not going to make a mess of this if I give you the keys to the kingdom and service my customers? And then it comes down to, and are you capable, and what's your price look like? Where I think that, this gives BPOs a differentiator to say, actually, the trust and transparency thing is ticked because we've been validated. Now let's talk about how competent we are, and now let's talk about what the price looks like. So I do think that it is starting to take hold. As I say, we're 4 months in. There's 2 accredited members that have come through already, and a number that are currently going through the process. But I think very quickly that the momentum will build, where the question is, why would you take the risk with a non-accredited member?
Yeah. But the BPO is not paying then to have the accreditation, or they are paying for that.
So there's a small accreditation fee that ultimately pays for running the accreditation. So it's checked every 6 months to make sure that what is being presented is still valid and true. We know that the world moves very, very quickly. So in 6 months' time, they may have a site in the Philippines that they didn't have before, or they might have a new accreditation from ISO, or maybe they have got experience in a particular sector that they didn't have before. So there's a 6 months validation check, but ultimately the fee is very, very small, and it just runs the cost of the accreditation. What the promise is to the BPOs is that by being honest and transparent and opening up their doors to accreditation, what it will mean is that I ultimately introduce them to clients without any commission. So whether or not it's 1 client, 50 clients, 10 seats, 5,000 seats, there's no commission to pay. And the client can take confidence that I'm not recommending BPO X or BPO Y because there's an extra commission point or there's a commercial incentive for me to do so. I present all accredited members to the clients, and then they're starting from a place of trust and transparency, and then they choose ultimately who they want to do business with based on the capability and based on the price. So it's a really fair, level playing field where ultimately there's a shortlist provided to the client that says, okay, rather than looking at the thousands of BPOs out there, look at this set of accredited members that you can trust, and then you take your pick based on the commercial decision that is right for you and based on the capability that's right for you. So yeah, no commission to pay from the BPO, and fee-free for the clients. So there's no charge for the clients for helping them in that process and introducing them to accredited members.
Yeah, I think that all of that, especially like not taking a commission from the BPO, that's essential really, because you need to have some credibility, proving that what you're saying is the truth. I mean, we all know that there's there's loads of pay-to-play organizations out there that have got awards ceremonies or some form of accreditation. This is the best possible employer in the world, because we've got this little gold medal. There's all these kind of things, and it sort of it reduces the trust in the sort of accreditation process when people feel that you can just buy this credibility.
Absolutely. So, have you really won an award, or did you buy a couple of tables at the award ceremony? Absolutely. And that's why it's designed to say, actually, there is zero commission received. So I'm not going to steer you in one way or another. I'm just going to present to you trusted members that check out. And it's not going to be for all BPOs. Marks and BPOs will prefer, I guess, to pay commission to brokers, and the brokers will divert them one way or another. I think what has surprised me is the amount of clients I talk to that aren't aware of the broker model that exists in the market. That they can be paying anywhere between 5 and 15% more than what they should be, based on the price of the broker, because often that's lost in the wage arbitrage or the savings that the outsourced provider gives them. So if you're saving 30%, it sounds great, but in reality, it should be 45%. But actually, there's 15% that goes to the broker. And I stand by the notion that, and it's a question that I can't find anyone that can give me an answer to. I'll open it to you, Mark, and maybe you have an answer. But if a broker is financially incentivized by a greater percentage, or they earn more money based on the more money you pay, how do they have your best financial interests at heart? Or how can they say, actually, I'm recommending provider X rather than Y, without the transparency of saying, I get 8% over here and 4% over there? And it's quite interesting, because when you look at the UK and the US and Canada and Australia, if you're a mortgage broker, you have to legally declare the commission from the mortgage provider that you're recommending, and they can see as a client to say, well, you're recommending this mortgage provider, but I can see you're earning X% versus this percent, and it allows that honest question to say, are you truly recommending this because it's the best mortgage solution for me, or is it because you're earning more commission? And the same for the UK energy market. They've been talking about it for a while, but they've just started their own accreditation in UK energy to say, okay, from now on, from a voluntary basis, initially, we want you to declare what your broker commission is. But in time, I see that also becoming mandatory. So again, it seems quite alien that an industry with the size of the deals that we're talking about, multi-million-dollar deals, multi-million-pound deals, there isn't that transparency in that side of the market. So it's a question for you, I guess, Mark. Can you understand how that works as a transparent market when a broker earns more, the more you pay?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point. And this is, also in the UK, you're probably aware of the car industry and the people purchasing new cars on credit, and the brokers there that have recommended which organization that can offer the loans for that financing. That's something that's been going back more than 20 years, and I know that's probably going to result in enormous amounts of compensation, because customers are paying percentages to brokers without anybody ever being transparent about it. And so yeah, it's a good example that the industry itself could have just headed that off at the pass years ago, just by being open and transparent about who's getting paid to offer what advice. And it's and it's exactly true what you're saying about the BPO brokers. And in fact, it surprises me that the business model still exists. I commented on LinkedIn recently because I saw a BPO that was actually posting some information about their, I think they opened a new office or something, and they were posting information about it. But the comment there was, BPO brokers, call us for more information. And and I thought that's odd that your approach and the people you're trying to communicate with are BPO brokers, rather than trying to develop a reputation for your business directly with, well, potential prospects.
Yeah, and hopefully the model that I'm introducing is based on that foundation, as I say, of trust and transparency, but also initially creates a win-win, because ultimately someone pays for that commission. So whether or not the BPO pays for the commission and it comes out of their end, which means they're not as profitable and they don't have the money to invest in their people or their marketing or whatever it may be they want to invest in, or the client pays, or ultimately both of them share some of that, but the money comes from somewhere and goes into the broker. So my tagline is, let's BPO differently, because I think there's a different way of doing it. We don't need to pay large sums of money to brokers to do solid introductions. The accreditation can be that pathway that says, okay, you're a client that's looking for a BPO, I'll help you fee free, and you're a BPO that's looking for a client, I'll help you without commission. The only caveat is you need to be accredited to make sure that the client knows exactly what they're buying and you're entering into the relationship in a transparent way. But my call, I guess, for anyone listening out there that is a client that is utilizing a broker, please ask the question: where do, what commission are you taking from the deal, and are you happy with that? And if you're not happy with that, please get in touch and I'll help you for free.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see if anybody responds to that. I mean, this leads me on to maybe the final point then. That was the recent research from Forrester, where they were pointing out that more than 9 out of 10 B2B buyers are actually starting the process not by calling up a broker and saying, can you introduce me to a BPO? They're actually just going to Gen AI. They're asking Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude, who is an expert in this area that I can potentially partner with. And I've tried this myself. You can have some very detailed conversations with ChatGPT, for example, asking about, you might be asking about a region, who is offering BPO services in Kenya or South Africa or wherever. Who are the international players? Who are the local players? Who's a specialist in serving retail customers? You can do all of this kind of stuff now, just through having a conversation with Gen AI, and that's clearly changing how the buyers are finding the information about the BPOs. But do you think then that accreditation can feed into that then? So something has to train the AI. So these companies must be publishing white papers and blogs and information saying, here's what we're doing, here's where we've got the skills. And that's training the AI, which is then summarizing that for the buyers. But the question is, how reliable is that? I mean, is it just a content farm full of information telling the world that we are experts in something that maybe they're not? So you could have the AI also mentioning the accreditation as well, and rating how valuable the information is then.
Yeah, and it might have even been an article that you published, Mark, which showed that I think there was a 90% drop off from Google search in the last however long, and people are using these tools now to help support. I do think there is a challenge out there around how valid the information is, and whether or not it's all encompassing. So I've done the same exercise that you've done. So name me all the BPOs in Cape Town, and it's not quite as accurate as what you imagine it would be. What I do think, though, is that the accreditation supports what is factually being presented. So hopefully, yes, in time it will pick up and say these are your accredited members. But you raised a very good point. It's only as good as the information that people want to put in. So if they want to put in, we're the best BPO in the world, you could ask who's the best BPO in the world, and it will come up to say they're the best BPO in the world. What I hope is that the accreditation is a stamp over that says, okay, these are the best BPOs in the world, but these are the best BPOs in the world that truly have been accredited, and they can stand up to what they're presenting to it. So I see that it complements. But I think any help. I mean, you may or may not be aware of this. There are thousands of BPOs in the world. Thousands. It's such a competitive market space, and all of them are trying to vie for time and attention. So anything that helps with the shortlist, such as the tools that you've mentioned, or ultimately the accreditation, I see perhaps that being the starting point of a shortlist, and then the accreditation really finishes it off, that says, okay, these are the shortlist of the shortlist. Because how do you find your ideal match when everybody's out there all saying that they're the ideal partner. It's an envious task. There's certainly more partners than has ever been available. I think we're seeing some industry consolidation in parts, but I think for every business that's acquired or consolidated, there's another two BPOs that replace it, because I think that the market continues to grow. So I see, I guess, any tool that helps shortlist a client, truly understand who might be a good partner, only as a good thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we could probably keep on talking for hours about this, actually, because it's every question seems to open up another can of worms. But we should probably wrap up there, and just wish you best wishes on this mission that clearly is needed for the entire industry.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on, and it's a great opportunity, I guess, for me to talk a little bit further around the accreditation and how it's shaping the industry. I think for anybody that's listening that would like to hear more, whether or not that be a client that's looking for a BPO partner and is faced with those thousands of different BPOs to choose from, or whether or not it's a BPO that says, actually, we think that we can BPO differently here and would like to be accredited, and we like the sound of this new model, then please also get in touch too. The more clients that want to utilize the service and the more accredited members, slowly but surely, this becomes the new model in the industry, which, as I say, I think is the win-win. It leads to long-term partnerships.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favourite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.